Welcome to another episode of Behind the Strategy, a place for conversations, a place to find out and reveal all. What is behind your strategy? And in this episode, we have DebRa. Was that better?
That's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. And this is the type of conversation that I like to have. It's just setting the scene, setting the tone, because I want to have important conversations. But at the same time, remember that, there's always different sides to things. So we have quite a lot in common in as much as that we love NLP, don't we? So before we get stuck into talking about the topic for today, which is all about those shoulds and expectations we have online, what inspired you? What led you to get into NLP? Because I love linguistics, and that's what brought me into it.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, I used to run a different business, and within that business, somebody had done a presentation because they'd been on an NLP course. And I was like, this sounds interesting. I like the idea of that. And when I left that business, I was considering what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to go back in teaching. The politics of that's way too much for me to handle. And the thing that I liked most about my last business was the coaching and the training aspect, because I love seeing those light bulb moments that people get. That's why I like those things. And I was watching this morning,
I do. How did you do?
When you've not got anything else to do in the morning. And there was, I think it was the Speakmans or somebody, and they said they were a life coach, and I've never heard of this life coach thing before. And I was like, well, I've been doing this for years for free. Like, everybody's called me Auntie Deb since I was in my teenage years. So if I learn and do it properly, then I'll be able to go ahead and coach people and help and carry on helping people, because at the core of me, yes, I want to help people. So I joined, I was looking all over for coaching courses, and I found one. I clicked an advert on Boxing Day that was pink, anything pink, and I'll click on it. And it was for coaching. Ended up on a free weekend to find out whether I liked them. And I did, and I joined, and it included NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. And I wasn't too bothered about the hypnosis, but I really love the timeline therapy, and I love the NLP stuff. And to pay for the courses, I went back and supply taught so that I could pay for the courses. But what I did do is go into the schools and experiment with the kids. So if there was no work left, I'd be like, Singer, do you want to learn some magic? And they'd be like, oh. And if it can work on a year 9 boy, who were the least susceptible people on the planet, then it'll work on anyone, basically. So for me, it worked with year 9 boys. And so I knew it'd work with other people as well.
I love that. I went the year before the pandemic, another guest who we're having on the podcast soon, Jo Howarth, she put on an amazing festival. It was an outdoor festival. Lots of people, we all went up there and did all sorts of things. And she asked me if I could do a talk. And I said, could I do something for the kids? And so you'll have no doubt as to why my course was so popular, my talk, because it was called How to Brainwash Your Parents. Oh, I love it. Yes.
Fun.
Exactly. And it went down really, really well. And it was so fun. Absolutely. Yeah, it was brilliant fun, because it does. It's about the language that we use, isn't it? And that brings me to the language online. The language that I see and used online, we're told, aren't we, emphatically by pretty much every bit of messaging, be authentic, be genuine, be vulnerable, be real. What, all at once? How do I do that all at once? And if I'm not, what does that mean? I thought I was being real. Well, when you see that, what's the first thing that sort of jumps into your mind?
I just laugh, because the authenticity stuff, I think that what people really mean is that quite often when we've been in a professional job or a job of some kind, you're expected to behave in a particular manner. As a teacher, I had to behave in a teacherish manner And some of my more outlandish ways of being a teacher were questioned because I'd done Camp America. So I'd learned how to work with kids and not have to tell them off all the time. So some of the ways that I worked as a teacher were very much questioned because I wasn't being professional. Having said that, coming into the business world, I had a professional character. And for years, I didn't know how to type out in your post in a way other than appearing professional, which actually didn't sound authentic to some people. So I think that's what people mean when they say that. And actually, I think every single moment we're being authentic in that moment, whether we're acting it or not.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, most people don't learn how to write as we speak, because we're taught how to write in a certain way, aren't we?
Yes.
So, more formally. So when we write, let's say we're writing a script or a post or anything like that at all, we will write it how we think things should be written. We are mindful of those shoulds, those expectations that we're presenting something about our business to the world. We have to be professional, and separating that from, hey, I did a rather wacky thing today. Now I must tell you this beforehand. That's completely different to, oh my God, look at me doing this wacky thing. Ha! What do you think?
Yeah,
and it's alien to us. It is alien to us because it's almost like embracing the inner child and releasing that out into the community. But because we haven't done it for so long, this is my theory, we haven't done it for so long, unless we have. But when we first start doing it, it's alien to us. It doesn't feel right. We feel, oh my gosh, everyone's going to look at me. We feel all those normal fears, don't we? Like we're doing something wrong.
Yeah. And this is the thing, because I want to come to your should. So the word, I ban the word should around me. Don't should me, because I literally recoil from anybody who wants me. Because it's a guilt-inducing word and a shame-inducing word. So when people who talk about you should do this online, they don't realise that they're guilting and shaming you into doing it. And yet actually, because of whatever background they're coming from and the reason that they're using the word should because it's guilting and shaming you into doing it.
Yeah, it is. And even reframing. So I reframe things a lot, obviously, since I learned NLP as well. But also I did go back to uni and study linguistics for 2 years. And I could hear my professor in the background quite often, no, because the tiniest word can mean something so different to other people, to everybody. So I reframe in, hang on a minute, if I think, I should be doing this, where is that coming from? Can I hold hand on heart, say, actually, I must do this if I want this to happen, or if I don't want that to happen? Can I reframe that? Because that gives me two obvious pathways that I then therefore have a choice. And so I'm taking back my choice. And as a person who has an ADHD brain, not being in control and feeling obliged to people please, if you like, because we want everyone to be happy and we don't want to be seen as being, the wrong person or doing the wrong thing. Even if we're working through that, trying to reframe things, people will have given me a lot of different options to try and reframe things and change things. And they're all based on neurotypical ways of doing things because that's how it's always been done. And what I like to look at is, okay, can I go behind that should? Am I going behind that? Not just, let's just reframe it so it sounds better, because that still falls on deaf ears to me. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think there's a massive difference between how neurotypical brains work and how neurodiverse brains work. And I think what a lot of people forget is that just because it's worked one way for one person doesn't mean it'll work the same way for another. And even within, let's take ADHD.
Okay.
Those who have got ADHD, it will show up differently for each person. So for instance, I would be described as ADHD. Absolute time blindness, shocking time blindness, and lack of organisation. Whereas my best friend, who would also be classed as ADHD, loves things like everything has to be completely scheduled and on time. And if you're 2 minutes late, it's like, why are you 2 minutes late? So from a time perspective, so even within those diagnoses, from person to person, there will be slight nuances and changes, because we are all completely and utterly beautifully unique.
We are. And here's a question back at you about that. It's about having our own individual coping strategies, how we manage it.
Yeah.
So by her having everything down to the wire, like on time and everything, she has still got time blindness. But that is how she has worked out how to best manage and cope with it. Whereas somebody else won't. They'll find a different way, or they won't be able to find a way. Perhaps they haven't learned a way to address it for themselves. And that doesn't mean that they have to either. However, if anything is causing an issue, regardless of the type of brains we have, I sincerely believe it's worth addressing it and not just putting it down to, oh, well, my brain does that anyway. Because I hate the thought, and I hate the idea that my brain isn't good enough. And it's taken me a long time to realise that actually I was buying into the old, traditional social norms of there's one way and everything that is different to that is not right. And actually go back 300, 400, 500 years, it wouldn't have been like that. We would have all just stepped into being who we were and either lived or died, quite frankly, depending on our coping strategies. And so I always like to bring the saber-toothed tigers into conversation because
love it.
I think they're important. Important.
And I often talk about saber-toothed tigers too, so it's all good.
Yeah, fantastic. The thing is, everything has a different element of being how hungry that saber-toothed tiger is and whether it's a real danger or not. And sometimes our brain can't tell the difference. So we can only do quite often what we need to do at the time. And one of those things, which I believe everybody experiences in the online world, especially when you're starting out as a small business owner, or even if you get to the point where actually, I'm quite comfortable with what I'm doing and I'm ready to grow, we are still mindful that out there are all our customers or all our clients, and we don't want to look bad in front of them. So we still buy into somebody said, oh, well, I found if you do this, this works. And so we are more inclined to test it and try it, aren't we? Have you noticed within yourself or with others that you may have worked with or seen just by analysing comments? Because I know if you are an NLP trainer, you will be analysing words in comments without even realising it's like second nature. Yeah. Have you seen a trend in any way of the type of things at the moment which are currently impacting people, do you think, in their behaviour online?
I actually think a lot of the labelled behaviours are impacting how people respond to things. Not show up, I'm not talking about showing up, but how they respond to what's happening. And I think it's interesting because I was having a chat with a friend of mine the other week who's autistic and ADHD. And I said, I really want to appeal to the ADHD audience, but I don't want to say ADHD because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So I'm using quirky and neurospicy because I don't want to use ADHD. And she was like, that's an interesting one. Yeah. And there's the other thing that's been around recently is the narcissist thing and the gaslighting thing and the menopausal. But maybe these are all things that have happened. The perception is projection. What you see, you attract. So, but I think it's people's responses to those. And what people don't understand is that because we are all so beautifully individual, we will all respond based on our own memories, our own values and beliefs, our own personality profile, our own interpretation of time, matter, space and energy. All of those the way that we respond is based on all of those. So when we think about the things that are online, we can say, oh yeah, that's it. I mean, I've noticed there's some things that have come up about ADHD, and I've gone, oh, well, that explains a lot, because that wasn't in my ADHD training back in 1997. Or the significant trainings that I've had along the way, because as well in a teaching situation, again, it's looking at that particular child and their particular form of whatever diagnosis they have. So I think now it comes to the online world, when we get into the alls and the everybodies, that's where there's a problem.
Yes, 100% agree with that. Now, from a strategy perspective, because obviously I'm a business strategy consultant, and I don't like to analyze, rather, excuse me, I'm going to say it again, folks. I'm a business strategy consultant. Oh, no, I do. Because it works for me. That's what it is. I don't like to necessarily tell people what to do. I don't like to have to sit there and wait for them to decide what to do. It's just consult with me, tell you what I think. You either lump it or like it or lump it, whichever way you want to do it. So here's the thing. Here's what I'm noticing, and it's about the trends. Because first, there's 2 points here out of what you've just said. One is, when we are looking at trends online, there seems to be a cycle. Things come up in how behaviour is online, then it gets almost policed. People give their opinions, either they like it or they don't, and then we start to do a little bit of a cull, whether consciously or subconsciously, where we start hanging out with the people who are more likely to agree with us on that particular perspective, opinion, issue, trend, or what have you, okay? And now that means that we're then hanging out mostly with people who agree with us and who are more similar to us, because that's a fundamental thing about being a human, isn't it? We want to feel safe, so therefore, by hanging out with people who are more like us, we're going to feel safer, aren't we? It is about that.
Yeah. And
what this means is that we sometimes will then miss other perspectives by default. That is going to happen in an online world, because we can block them. We can stop them, right?
Yeah.
So the other point is that when we then see, oh my gosh, I'm seeing so much ADHD, and you have raised a very good point. A lot of people really, it's everywhere. Well, if you're a small business owner, I'm going to just be quite upfront about this. If you're a small business owner and you are hanging out in the same audience that you've always hung out in, then yes, it's going to be everywhere. Because when you come offline and you go to perhaps a networking event, or you perhaps go to another event somewhere else, like a workshop that is live, or perhaps you go to a different type of workshop, masterclass online that is not related to that type of thing, you're literally learning a topic, you will find that you're in the minority. I know then I'm in the minority. And actually, I'm not surrounded by other people who get it like me. Now, that on one hand does make me feel a bit vulnerable, but it also reminds me that it isn't everywhere. It's only everywhere within the people that we hung out with. And it's a really important thing about these shoulds and expectations is if we're struggling with them and they're not working, then it's time to mix up your audience online, because otherwise you can't grow as a business if you're only ever trying to sell. Let's just take it back to brass tacks. You can't keep selling the same things to the same people or hope they're going to like and share. We have to get past that. We have to actively go out and seek the audiences and the environments that we want to be in. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about, let's say we're stepping out of the comfort zone, but people will call it a comfort zone, and we want to expand, we want to grow our business. So we know that we have to reach a new audience. We know we have to reach new people. We can go onto a different platform. All of a sudden, we're in a new environment. And what's the first thing we see? If you want to grow on this platform, you should do this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's everywhere. And this is why, for me, because I recoil when there's a should, when I see those shoulds either in people's sentences or coming out of their mouth, I scroll on by. because they're not the people to work with for me. Whereas my friend, she responds to a should. You tell her to should, oh, I think you should do this, she'll do it. So there are some people that will...
Why do you think that is? Sorry to cut you off, didn't mean to do that, but it just... I have ADHD, I jump in to interrupt people.
No.
And then I apologise.
And I'm the same. I have ADHD and I'll be on a story 3 stories away from what the conversation starts now. So that's fine. Why do I think that is? Yes, we're all beautifully individual. So however we have been, I think a lot of it is to do with how we were brought up and the language that was used around us then and things that have happened to us since. But I know that if somebody says, oh, we should do that, I literally lean back. I want to get away from that person. Even online, somebody's did it, has tested me online, and they said, oh, Debs, I think you should do it. And I literally did it. And they were like, look, she's even moved away from me. She did online.
Well,
so they want something, they'll move towards. They'll lean in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So if I was saying, hey, folks, you really should listen to our podcast, you're going to be like, no, don't. You shouldn't. So it's you must listen to our podcast if you want this, if you want that.
And it's from an NLP perspective, it's a modal operator of necessity. So a modal operator of possibilities from an NLP perspective gives you choice.
So what's a modal operator? Let's just clarify that.
A modal operator, the modal operators are the words that like have to, need to, should, want, will, those types of words, possible words, possibly, maybe, might. Those are modal operators. There's possibility and there's necessity. So if you need to or you should, they are necessity words. The coulds and the mights, they're possibility words. So it depends whether you like to have information given to you, and your body responds to needs, or whether it responds better to having choice.
Interesting. And I believe that is related back down to our core values. And the core values, we don't check in enough on them, because I know mine have changed throughout the years. Because originally our core values, it's like our moral code of how we have a little baseline as to where we can move forward and how we navigate the world, growing up as a child, and we start to challenge, create boundaries. And then based on the consequences, could be strict parents, could be not strict parents, could be strict school, it could be anything at all, that will impact how we then process information moving forward, which formulates our own opinions. Because I know a lot of people who have said, well, as soon as I left home, I didn't support the same football team as the rest of the family anymore, or I wanted to support my own. Then when you ask the question, okay, why was that? Is it because you were rebelling against it, or is it because you genuinely felt that the other football team were better and you liked them more? And quite often, when it's something quite simple like that, there's a pause. People don't know how to answer unless they're obviously saying quite clearly, well, no, I just didn't want to be the same as the rest. And they are making a stand. But are they then stepping into something which is truly them?
Well, there's a number of things in what you've just said. So the first one is, if somebody wants to make a stand and be different, that's me. There are some people who like sameness and some people who like differences. So I always talk about my dad. My dad's a sameness person. He's lived in this house since he was 6, other than from the age of being 6, and he's 75 now, other than when he first got married to my mum and they lived in their own place. He has the same, I don't have to have a shopping list because I buy the same shopping every week for him. I know that if we go for dinner, if there's steak, he'll probably have steak. Generally, it'll be gammon. And if it's a Sunday, it'll be a Sunday dinner. That he's a sameness person. You can guarantee from moment to moment the same. My dad has the same routine every day of what time he has his breakfast, what time and he has to tell me about it if he has a shower before 7 o'clock because he's done something different. It's like a novelty to him. Whereas I'm a differences person with a little bit of sameness. So routine works well for me. Yeah, actually, if somebody goes, do you want to go out tonight? I'll be like, yes. I like the spontaneity. If I go to the same restaurant, I want to try everything on the menu. I don't want to have the same meal every time I go, whether I've liked it or not. I just want to, I want to go through. And so that's an aspect, and that's part of your personality profiling, which in NLP is called meta programs.
Yes.
And I've forgotten everything else that's in there. No, I haven't. The other thing is that when we respond to things that are from our past and how we've been brought up, there are different elements with our core values that will stay with us from being young, because between the age of 0 to 7, in that first developmental era where we have no critical faculty, so we take everything on board like a sponge, we take on a lot of our values then, because they're the conversations that we hear, and they're the things that we see and we feel, and are kind of imposed because it's our parents will say, this is how it is. This is how you do this. This is what you think when you do this. This is how you cross the road. This is all those basic things then get transposed into the bigger things. When you get to the age of 7 to about 12, that's the idolization period. So that's when you may find people on YouTube that you like watching, games that you like playing, teachers that you like being with. And so you mimic and idolize them and take on some of their values. Then you get to the teenage area, which is a socialization era. And this is where you now start to take on different groups of friends. And they may have different ways that they do things. So you start to take on some of their values. And then all up to the age of 25, then we've got the next sort of era where we're going off, doing our own ventures and figuring out how life is without being with parents. Or that's the traditional way. I mean, with things how they are, kids are staying at home till they're 30 these days. But once you get to the age of 25, your core values only change when there's been significant emotional experiences that you've had. So births, deaths, marriages, moving a job, moving home, those kind of things. But as we know, if you are neurodiverse and suddenly find out you are, that's a significant emotional experience. So it's going to have an effect on your core values. If you suddenly find out that if you've had trauma in the past, the way that you respond to emotional experiences, some of them you may frame as being significantly emotional experiences, where for other people, they just go, it's just that. Yeah. So people who've got trauma in the past may also deal with things differently in that way, or different mental health things. They will see significant, so they will all have an effect on your core values. Now, I want to give you this as a sentence in 2 ways and see how you respond. Your core values should be done at least once a year. Note what I've used there.
And for those of you that can't see me, they're just listening, I just threw myself back into my swanky chair and nearly fell over.
Whereas the people that respond to should go, oh, I should I, right? I'll put that as a yearly thing to do. And the other sentence is, it's really helpful if you do your core values every year.
Yeah, because my next thing is, well, why? And I'd want an explanation. And that's when you can give that to somebody, and then it makes sense to it, because some people will just do what they think they need to do, and other people will question and query it because it needs to make sense for them.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting you say that about the core values, because there's a lot of research now that comes out which is saying that people who have an ADHD brain, their brains actually don't get to that stage at 25, which is what the neurotypical brain would be. It's nearer to be 35 to 40. And so that's why we can quite often be more childlike in our approach, or our brain is still taking that long to process everything.
Yeah.
And if you find out, or you may have experienced anything at all, like you've just said, you went over, anything you experience is going to impact what those core values are, right? And also, so is when you have to revisit it. So if you have to revisit something that may have happened and you're experiencing it through therapy, or you're relating it back into a story, a lot of people, if you're a storyteller of any good blah 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 blah, murder muddled. If you're a storyteller that's worth listening to, is what I'm trying to say. You will be feeling those emotions that you felt because you want to portray them out. Now, when I tell a story, I know that I automatically will protect myself from feeling those feelings, and a lot of people do this, by turning it into something that's funny, amusing. I don't like having to I empathise. I have deep empathy, but I don't like having to empathise with somebody really closely so much, because I will end up in tears unless I really like them, or unless it's appropriate. I'm not saying I don't. I'm not sort of, cold-hearted bitch, can't listen to it all. But I feel too much, and I am still learning how to protect myself from that. And so that made me, when I found out that I had ADHD at an older age, a late diagnosis, I learned all of those sorts of things. Why I did this, that, and the other, why I was feeling so much, why I was trying to, it's because I'm protecting myself and my thought process. And that's why I am more likely to be, I guess triggered is the word, or with information that I see online. And it's taken quite a long time for me to have to really look at what is it that is doing that. And I now know how to manage and cope with it. But gosh, the amount of effort that I have to do it, I cannot scroll down and constantly have to go, reframe here, reframe that, right. So for me, and suggest to anybody else, I will just block people, or I will hide the notifications. And it's not because I don't like them. I might like them very much, but I just can't manage that type of messaging constantly all the time, because I have to spend so much energy reframing it and telling myself I don't need to think about it. It's, and getting over that bit of self-doubt by saying, no, honestly, it's just out there all the time. You're just seeing it everywhere because that's what's happening. That's the way people are talking. It's not because it's important and you have to take notice, and you definitely don't have to take action, or not take action. And from a strategy point of view, I've learned now that the pause is crucial. Having a pause, for me to have brainwashed myself, because I'm a big, if we are being influenced by all this messaging from a young age growing up, the person who's influencing us most is ourselves. Ourselves, what's coming out of our mouth, what we're allowing ourselves to see, read, digest.
Yeah.
So having that pause and just go, hang on a minute, oh no, I don't need this, and putting a simple get out clause, I'm guessing is what I'm trying to say. I have to set myself up. I have to have get out clauses, because then it's like a default. I have to train myself tiny weeny little habits of, we talk about habits in a different perspective, but habits of how I'm consuming the content.
Yeah.
The shoulds. Sometimes we should be doing something, but the way that it's written and phrased, we should do this, we should do that if we want better health. And could be a positive. It's like, well, if you want to do that, you should do this. And it's the whole sentence is quite loose. But we have, I believe now, attached too much weight on opinion and the whole, hang on a minute, someone's trying to tell me what to do.
Yes, very much so. And opinions are just only that. They are just opinions. And the problem is that a lot of people want to back up opinions with scientific facts. And then when you learn about science, you just go, well, okay, whatever. Scientific advice,
DebRa, I love science, but the thing is,
I love science.
Every 10 years it changes and we learn something new, and I can't keep up with it. There's too much change.
Well, when you notice, so if we take the really simple one of coffee is good for you, coffee is bad for you. Red wine is good for you, red wine is bad for you. Both of those examples have been in and out of the newspapers as the latest scientific research since I was a teenager. I can remember my dad was a Daily Mirror reader, and I used to read that as a teenager. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm sure last year they said that red wine is good for you, and this year they're saying red wine is bad for you. And it still comes up to this day of red wine being good or bad for you. Well, actually, we are all beautifully individual. And actually, when you look at how scientific research is done, whoever comes up with the research has got to have come up with the theory for, what's the word? There's a word that it is, that you come up with what you think the end result will be. That you want to prove something. All scientific research is because you either want to prove something or you want to disprove something.
Yes.
So whatever the outcome of the researcher or the people that have paid to have the research done, that's what they're looking to find out. Yeah. And they only have to have a 40% pass rate for it to be valid. Well, 40%, well, what's happening to the other 60%?
That's interesting.
We only have to have a 40% pass rate for research to be valid. That's less than half.
Yes. It doesn't make sense at all, does it?
No, it's a so this is why science can move on. This is how experimentation can happen. This is how we can actually improve society, because we can put things in place for that to happen. And yet also, if people are arguing over scientific facts, next year the facts will have changed, or the facts will have changed because of the researcher.
Yeah. And how the research was done, who it was conducted with. Actually, I'll just tell you a funny story. When I was doing my psychology at uni, and one of our we had to do an experiment to prove a theory, and I found it's about memory recall, and one of the things ADHDers have, which I didn't know I had that at the time, is issues with working memory in our executive functions. It's a bit of a dysfunction. So I thought, I'd really like to look at some research that's been done with working memory to see how I could do it, what I can do to change. And I found an amazing experiment, and I can't remember all the names off the top of my head right now. Sorry, people, but there you go. But it was an amazing experiment, and the premise was that we will remember something. We can recall information better when we recall it in the same or a similar environment that we were taking the information in. And it was based on people taking exams. So you're at school, you're in your classroom, you're learning all the stuff, and then you've now got to recall it in a big hall, all in lines, and take your exams there. Mm. And the research was done to show what they could have done. And so we set one up to do with shopping lists. And there was an experiment done with divers. What they did was they were trying to remember information when they were diving, and could they recall it again? And I loved diving. So we did this experiment to find out if this was true, if you do remember things more when you go diving, when you're in the same place, and you can recall it better. So we did this experiment, and because we were talking about the diving part of it all the time, it just stuck in my mind. And we had this big shopping list, and we had to give lots of people different ways of trying to remember the shopping list. And ultimately, there's two things to this. Number one, if you can go into the shop and make your shopping list and then recall it, you'll be fine. And it sort of defeats the object. It's like, hang on a minute, I need the shopping list beforehand. So you can do it by closing your eyes and projecting yourself and perhaps walking around the aisles in your mind, or trying to remember what you want, or that sort of thing. But the funny thing was that the following year I was diving, and we went down, and all I could remember as I landed, all I could think of was like, oh my God, the shopping list. And all I could think about was, oh my God, I'm under here. And, your mind wanders. And I was like, oh, well, I should have brought that research here. I wish I could have been able to do it here. That's all I was thinking of. And then I was like, because I can actually remember everything on the list, which I couldn't beforehand.
Yeah.
So things that are connected will have an impact on us now, next week, years later. And so when you're retelling something, you step back into it, you're revisiting it, and you have to reassess core values, don't you? Out of curiosity, just to switch this up and change this up before we do have to end this lovely conversation, what are your core values that you would say really drive you? Because I know we can have quite a lot. We have a big moral code, but what are the top 2, 3 that really drive you and underpin everything you do?
So I know these off, man. So the top one is helping others, which I've kind of rebranded as connection. But it is actually helping others. It's being connected and helping others. The second one is wisdom. And I've phrased it as that because I like learning, but I like teaching as well. So I think wisdom as a whole encompasses both of those, the giving and taking wisdom. And the third one is fun, because if it's not fun, I ain't doing it.
So are they your personal ones or are they your business ones?
They're both my personal and business ones, because they're my core values. If I'm not helping people, I'm bored. And
so if you're this is interesting. So if you are telling somebody, let's say you can't help people anymore, right? Yeah, just take that out of the equation.
Yes.
That's a really good question, isn't it? To always put others before ourselves, why is that? Why does that? You don't have to answer this, but if you do, it'd be pretty cool. Why is it that helping people for you has to be the number one? Because that is also about how your messaging is, how you shape yourself, how you want people to see you. Now, I also value helping people, but if I wasn't able to help people, it wouldn't mean that I can't still be the person that I am. I would find something else to do. So what I'm saying is there's a difference between helping somebody else as a core value, where you value service, over something like wisdom. Because when you're teaching, you're giving service, which is wisdom. So that's connected. And wisdom for you, the wanting to learn knowledge, I would quote, why is that? So why helping people? Why is that the most important way that you have to live?
So for every value, there's a personal reason for it. And mine is that when I help people, I love their response.
Yes.
To the help. B, I feel that I've done a good job if I've helped somebody else. It makes me feel proud and
validated.
Yeah, validated. I don't think I'd have ever used the word validated myself, but yes, that is how I feel when I've helped somebody. Especially when it's the stuff that I'm really knowledgeable about, which is a very close second, because all of my values are literally like this in front of me. So when I've helping somebody can even mean somebody's dropped something, I'll pick it up and give it them. Their thanks, their response to that, I feel good that I've done it. I feel good that I've helped somebody.
Well, that's right. And I think it's nice to have that as somebody does drop something. I am somebody who would also bend down and pick it up for them. I wouldn't just stand and look at them. I am that person too.
Yeah.
Taking it one step beyond that, that's an external form of validation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because being externally validated is important to us. I think it's important to recognise that it's okay to have an external form of validation to help us feel as good as, better than, or good about ourselves, because we have to deal with and interact in the world, don't we?
Well, it's another personality section. It's another meta program. So you either enjoy external validation or you know inside yourself. So there are people that don't need external validation. They completely and utterly know inside that whatever they're doing is the right thing. And there are people on the opposite extreme end of the scale that need validation for everything. Everything. Now, I used to be the person that would need a lot of external validation. And then I'd be like, I know that. Why do you ask? Because of the work that I've done on myself, I now know inside. And yet sometimes I just like that external validation.
But that's a good thing, because we all need to, we all have this innate sense of wanting to belong, feel accepted, and be part of. So regardless of whether we have unique differences, whether we like being the same, whether we like being different, we just want to be accepted for who we are, regardless, and at whatever cost to us, and by however means. So if we have had childhood experiences, adult experiences growing up, well, we've learned that actually we get more boxes ticked by helping someone. We have to be very mindful we are not crossing the line between being helping and being people pleasing, because that's where you have to do work on yourself, isn't it? And
huge. And again, I learned the word no in 2008, and it was a game changer.
Wow.
But it also made me realise who were my real friends and who were my friends that just kept me because I'd do everything for them.
Yeah.
So now I know what people pleasing is, and I know that that's what my blueprint is. Then I've got things in place to help me realise where I'm people pleasing, and it gives me choice to go, yes, I want to do this, or no, actually that doesn't align with what I'm about.
And I think that's really important, because it ties back into how we started the conversation. In fact, that we want to look good online because we have customers and clients. We need to put across the front, the face, because that's how people are going to be first instantly attracted to us, to want to work with us or to be in our world. And then if we have any worth, if they do too, then it's like wooing and courting, isn't it? Then you find out a bit more about each other, and then you decide, I'm going to stay in that person's world or not, because we have a choice.
Yeah.
And it's when we don't have the confidence in our own decisions about making that choice, because we have placed upsetting somebody else above our own needs.
Yeah.
And I don't mean, doing something mean and nasty on purpose. Obviously, it's going to upset people. That's just mean and nasty. I mean, in a genuine way, if we think people are always going to be, we don't want to worry somebody, we don't want to upset them, then I think that takes you into a different realm of, well, that's conflict. So it's, is people pleasing and conflict are both connected, very, very highly connected, because they take away our choice. And so, I really appreciate you sharing how you've had to work on that as well. You're not the only one. I have too. Because I said to you, there's very connected to wisdom. I value being seen as somebody who, well, honesty is one of my first things. I would hate for anybody to think I was dishonest. I'm honest to a point where I bill by the minute, which might sound a bit, highfalutin, or fancy pants, but it's because I know that that's the only way that I can keep a check on myself. Because at the end of the day, we are accountable to ourselves. And if you think about how many, let's just say, I don't know, we might have bought courses, we might have joined groups, we might have, taken a class or joined a membership for accountability, for somebody to help keep us accountable.
Yeah.
Unless you're living with that person all day and every day, you can lie.
Oh,
right?
100%.
right? But who are we lying to? Well, ourselves. Because we don't want to face the truth of it. Now, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe we're not hurting or harming anybody until the point where it doesn't work for us anymore. So having to face and having to look deep in what your core values are, when you see something online, you think, I should do this, I shouldn't do that. You see a new idea. I'm going to suggest that it would be worth looking at how you respond to that. Listeners, you, me, how are we responding to that and why? And taking it behind, just where did that thought come from? And a real easy little technique for doing that is just one word. It's my one word technique, right? Why? And I know you know this as an NLP trainer. Oh, that didn't make me feel good. Okay, why? Because I'm always seeing it. Why is it annoying me? If I'm always seeing it, am I cross or am I annoyed because I'm always seeing it and I don't want to keep seeing it because I want to see something else? I'm bored. Is it that simple? Or is it because I don't like the thoughts that it's bringing up, or I don't want to discuss that? It's just, the old-fashioned, oh, don't talk about money, it's so vulgar, darling, type of thing, because that's, you know what I mean. What have we decided to take upon ourselves as our ways of things that we will and won't accept? So just asking that, well, why? Why didn't I feel like that? Because there's going to be some different options. It's not going to be as simple, and it's quite challenging. And if anybody does any journaling, and you might struggle with keeping the thoughts in, I would suggest writing down why. Just writing down the word why. You're hearing yourself and saying it out loud. You're hearing yourself saying it. You're seeing yourself write it. You're then seeing it written, and you're using all your senses to help bring it to something that's important that has to be addressed. And therefore, you're more likely to think honestly to yourself.
Yeah. I often use for what purpose. I'm not a person that responds well to why. So yeah. I don't why myself. Either I don't should and I don't why. So
I love that. Yeah, and there's another alternative, folks. DebRa said, just ask yourself, for what purpose?
What purpose?
How is? I tell you what, I saw you put in a post a while ago. It's like, well, how is this serving you? Or no, what you actually asked is this serving you? I mean, yeah. And if so, how? And if not, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love hearing. I love it when I see posts where you do a simple challenge. Sometimes the way that you write things, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? It's like, oh, hang on a minute. And underneath that, folks, DebRa is just reminding you that you have a choice.
You have a choice. Every time you have a choice. And the basis of NLP is to give you choice.
Yeah.
And for you to feel whole. So if there's ever a time where you get that icky feeling in your stomach, that gut feeling, that's your intuition kicking in. And if you don't know what it means, if you don't know why you're getting that feeling, it means something isn't right somewhere along the way. And that's where you ask the question, either why or for what purpose, And if you're unsure of how to access things unconsciously, actually ask your unconscious mind. This seems like a really weird thing to a lot of people, but I'll just say, unconscious mind, what is it today? It's having me feel a little bit weird when I see this person pop up online. What is it bringing up for me?
Yeah.
For what purpose am I having these feelings? And then just jot it down. Jot down whatever comes out. And I talk about it like as if you've been on Tinder. Because on Tinder, you swipe like this, and you see and you literally barely a second, and it's swipe, 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 swipe. And this is what we do with what's going on up here. Whatever the first response is, when you've asked your unconscious mind, the answer is the unconscious mind's answer. If you keep swiping, that's you consciously processing and thinking over things. Don't stop thinking over things. Actually, just ask your unconscious mind what the right answer is and take what comes up first.
I love it.
I'll mull things over for days.
Yeah.
I don't need to.
No, you don't need to, and I still do. But I have put things into place for that. And yeah, I mean, this has been marvellous. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know that we could look for hours and hours and hours, DebRa.
I was going to say this is like the first 2-hour podcast ever if we carry on.
This is the whole thing, isn't it? It's about, I'm not really a great lover of small talk. And so once you get really deep, actually, it's like going to a lesson at school. Oh, you got to learn this in 40 minutes. No, I'm interested. I want to learn more. I want to take 3 hours to think it through, because then I can work it through from the beginning to the end. So if you thought, listener, and thank you so much for listening or watching if you're watching, if you thought, I really should watch this to the end, well, A, hopefully you were right, but B, please go and tell everyone else you must watch it to the end.
Yes. There are some nuggets at the end. Nuggets of wisdom.
Nuggets of wisdom. Lovely, lovely, lovely. DebRa, thank you so much for being with me behind the strategy.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Strategy. I hope you enjoy listening to the next one. Please subscribe so you get notified of when that's published. And if you'd like to find out more, please pop over to thestrategysuccesslab.com. And please do share this with anyone who you think might need this today.